I'm honored, but I'm not here because of the fact that our real chair is not here, but she is not feeling well this morning and is sick, and we're going to ask for prayers for Dr. Barbara Nielsen and for any of our others. We have another member that is not feeling well today that's not here, and then we have a couple that are going to be on the webinar with us today. So welcome all of you. Thank you for being here today and participating in this great endeavor that we have going on, our teacher retention and recruitment. And I also want to take this moment to thank all of you that have come to present to us today. I will be introducing you individually, but we thank you for making the trip and being with us today, along with those that are in our audience that are here to observe and to listen today. Thank you so much. I would be remiss if I did not thank Lila for all the wonderful work that she has done to set this up. Lila, we thank you for the efforts that you've put forth and all the work that you have been doing over the weeks before we got here today. So thank you. I think that Dr. Nielsen may be online, and I think that she would like to say a few words. So Dr. Nielsen, we hope you are feeling better, and certainly the mic is open to you now. Dr. Nielsen, do you hear us? Dr. Nielsen? Is she on?
She's on.
Okay.
But she may not want to.
Dr. Nielsen, if you do not want to speak, we want you to speak if you want to. Certainly, we want to say hello to you, but I know that you have some difficulty in voice this morning and all, but we just pray that things will lighten up for you, and we will look forward to seeing you on our next visit. In that case, I'd like to go around and have everybody to introduce themselves, and also those of you that are on line with us this morning, introduction. So if we can start to my left over here and make your introduction, please.
Kevin O'Gorman, Edgefield County School District.
Wonderful.
Morning, Sheila Quinn, Clover School District.
Great.
Morning, Mark Butler, Anderson University.
Julia Sowell, Clemson Teaching Fellows.
Welcome.
Good morning, Tommy Hodges, Dean of the College of Education at the University of South Carolina and Director of SC Teacher.
Good morning, Dion Jameson, South Carolina Teacher of the Year.
Good morning, Carolyn Stiles, Greenville County Schools Board of Trustees.
Good morning, Frank Rainwater, South Carolina Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office.
Good morning, Cal Johnston, Dean for the School of Education, Francis Marion University.
Wonderful. And now those that are online, would you introduce yourselves? Or not? Are they online? They're just choosing. If you will unmute yourself and introduce yourselves. Okay, we have one more introduction here coming into the room. No, that's okay. We just finished introductions around the table.
Patrick Kelly, high school teacher at Blythewood High School and Director of Governmental Affairs for Palmetto State Teachers Association.
Thank you. Thank all of you for being here. And those of you that are online, if you can hear us, thank you very much for being online with us today. We're going to, excuse me, hear some great presentations today. And each one of them have 20 minutes to present to us. And there will be someone at the desk that will let you know when 5 minutes from the end of your presentation would be. So we would appreciate staying to our timeline because we have about 5 presenters today. The other thing is, besides thanking you for being here, we want to be able to ask you some questions, and at the end, for those of you that are still online and those of you that do not have to leave us too soon, we may have some questions from around the table. Please make note of your questions as the presenters present to us today. And at the end in the discussion, we will take any questions that you have in essence of time and give them plenty of time to make their presentation. If that suits you, we will do that in that manner. We're going to begin this morning with our Southern Regional Education Board, known to us as SREB, and we have Dr. Stephen Pruitt with us today, who is presenting. And Dr. Pruitt, I know that you have others with you that I would appreciate if you would introduce to our group.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. This is Megan Boren, our resident expert on the teacher retention and recruitment part of the work that we do. Just want to thank you for this work. We know that this is really hard work. We know that while we would love a silver bullet, we know those are only good for werewolves. So it's going to take a good bit of hard work. I'm going to just do a very brief intro, and then we'll turn it to Megan for some data, and then I'll come back in just a second. Where do I point? There we go.
Thank you. There you go.
Just so, very quickly, if you're not familiar with SREB, we are an interstate compact, which means that we are in the state law of all 16 of our states. It's a legislative contract, actually, among states for us to provide service and support around the areas of education and workforce. So we are always very happy to help you and to be here. We do these three things really well. I won't go into them for the sake of time, but we are always excited when we are asked to come and do this kind of work. So before I turn to Megan, we can all agree that every child deserves a great teacher. And we have really a significant shortage issue that continues to compile year after year across the country. I know earlier in my career, when I was in the classroom, the thought of having a shortage of elementary teachers was just unfathomable. I was a science guy, so we always had shortages. But you kind of always hope that'd get better, but now we're seeing it across the board. I would also ask that as you go through your conversations, you also think of this. What you're going to see today is a lot about the shortage when it comes to openings versus being able to fill those openings. But I would ask that you also think about the fact there's a bigger issue. And that issue is the openings, not for the openings that are posted on the internet, but the openings that students actually need to be successful in the next level. So for instance, just because your district doesn't offer physics doesn't mean that there's not a physics shortage. But when you look at the numbers, because we have one of our states that claims that they have no shortages in science teachers. Yes, they do. I can guarantee you they do. But their numbers don't substantiate it because it's just against job openings. So for students to be successful in the 21st century, especially 2030 and beyond, it's going to be critical that we actually start to take a broader look at how to ensure that these students get opportunities. So we thought what we'd do is we'd take you through a look at there we go. Some data around the region and specifically in South Carolina. I'm going to let Megan take that.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So I know there's been a debate about teacher shortages. Do we have a teacher shortage problem? And so we'd like to show a little bit of data to talk about that issue. We have some regional data and some snapshots from South Carolina data as well. Do we have a teacher shortage problem? If you're looking at teacher shortages under 4 key elements, then yes, there are most assuredly shortage problems in key areas around the country and within all of the states in the Southeast. Teacher shortages should be measured not just by bodies in the classroom and vacancies, of course, as Dr. Pruitt pointed out, but we also need to measure quality, we need to measure demographics of teachers, and we need to measure distribution of talent. There are some key shortage areas when we look at rural communities, low-income communities, certain subject matters, as Dr. Pruitt pointed out as well. So there are lots of pieces to this, not just body count. Let's dive in a little bit. Teacher shortages on when we're looking at quantity, those coming in, we have some key problem areas that have been going on for the last decade. Completion rates in educator preparation programs, both traditional and alternative, have been going down significantly, with over 15,000 fewer teachers being prepared in our region. Interest for students wanting to become teachers is nosediving as well, and you can see on the screen some of the reasons that they cite in survey data why students do not want to become teachers. It's getting harder to fill vacancies, it's getting harder to find qualified teachers, and for the first time since 1965, parents are now telling their students, more than half of parents are now telling their children, please do not become a teacher. And we know teachers are sometimes expressing that as well. The South makes up the most teacher vacancies in the country. You can see there on the screen, quite a significant amount of vacancies come from the South. So we know we have a problem, and again, it really takes a look, diving into specific communities that are affected by this even more. Also in quantity, we need to look at turnover rates and other key data points. The average turnover rate in the region has now bumped up to 10% as of 2020. Turnover rate of new teachers with less than 5 years of experience is almost half of those teachers in the pipeline. Half teachers say that they plan to leave their jobs. Are they actually leaving? Of course, we need to look at the data, but that points to a significant problem if they're saying that they may leave. And we're seeing resignations increase as well. In South Carolina, just a glimpse at some of your numbers, the teacher turnover rate is slightly higher than the region. There's approximately nearly 400 teachers, fewer teachers, that have been prepared since 2013. And the state reports significant shortages by subject and grade span in 7 different areas there that you can see on the screen, either between grades 5 to 12 or the entire pipeline of P through 12. When we're looking at quality, we don't have great measures of quality. We have proxy measures of quality, things like experience level, certification endorsements. Are you teaching in your field or outside of the field that you were trained to teach? In the region, we have nearly 16% of teachers who are inexperienced. That's less than 3 years of experience in the field. 4.2% uncertified or emergency certified, and just over 11% teaching out of field. You can see the numbers there in South Carolina. Of course, uncertified or emergency isn't applicable to previous years because you do not have that. But you have 19% reported inexperienced as of last year and just over 2% teaching out of field. But there's a bright spot. Our region does lead in national board certification of teachers, which is, again, another kind of proxy measure of quality, but an important one. And South Carolina is 3rd in the nation for national board certified teachers, according to their website. We do need to look at key things like demographics of teachers. Most teachers still are white and female, and that's true in South Carolina. And then we also need to look at distribution of talent. If you're thinking about quantity and quality and demographics and age and all of the key pieces around our teacher workforce and what it looks like, we then need to dive in. Where is the talent going in the state, in your districts? Do you have more inexperienced teachers or uncertified or out-of-field teachers teaching in low-income rural communities or other key places that you need to look at? We feature Kentucky data here because as of right now, South Carolina does not publish this kind of data. I'm not sure if you all collect it or not, but this would be a key piece to look into and collect to really understand if you have shortage issues, specifically quality issues in certain districts. Of course, we know that there are many things, many reasons why we're having problems with shortages across the nation. The pandemic has exacerbated those problems. We have compensation, out-of-pocket expenses, you have leadership pieces, morale, respect, numerous reasons teachers cite that they are not wanting to enter the profession or leaving the profession. And you can see here some key measures. Workloads are increasing, morale is decreasing. From a business standpoint, this would make a business leader look, red flag. I need to really pay attention to what I'm doing and make sure we make some key changes before we leave, before we have more folks in our workforce leave the profession. Compensation is a key piece, and our organization collects a lot of significant data on this, so I really encourage you all to check out our teacher compensation dashboard if you have not already. We collect data on not only teacher salaries, but healthcare benefits, retirement benefits, and then net pay for teachers, what really lands in their pockets after those key pieces, including taxes, are removed. You can see here some of the numbers from the region and from the nation. And then I've put also on this slide numbers from South Carolina. A true bright spot, you all exceed the region and the nation in average top salaries for teachers in your state, meaning you have dedicated quite a bit of work and policies both at the state and district level to make sure that teachers who are highly experienced are getting top salaries. But you are lower in than the region and the nation on average overall salary and average starting salary. So a point there you may want to look at, boosting up your earlier years for salary to help recruit more teachers in. When we look at net pay, which again, we do this analysis, and you can find more about it on our website, the numbers tie in together with my point that I just made. Starting salary dips below the region's averages, and your top salary for those who are nearing retirement exceeds. I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Pruitt, who's going to talk a little bit about the future and what we could see if we don't make some important changes.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you, Megan. So at SREB, one of the things we like to do is not just look at the data, but do a little prognostication. What's this going to look like over time? Because it's always important to see where we're headed. So projections, when we look at SREB states, currently are, in 1920, we had 1.3 million teachers serving 19.4 million students across our 16 states. In 2930, if the trend continues, we're going to have 1.8 million teachers, and you go, oh, good, 500,000 more teachers. Yeah, but look at the number of students. The number of students continues to grow and grow at a much more rapid pace, at 27.3 million students. When we look at the turnover rate, currently it's 10%. If it continues, we're looking at a 20% turnover rate. Average new teachers, turnover rate for less than 5 years is 45. That's going to jump by 11% by 2030. When we look at the current state of licensure, we currently have 4.2% uncertified or emergency, but that's going to increase over time. So you can see all of those pieces are continued to increase. And the bottom line is, by 2030, if things, to quote Dickens, if things remained unchanged, we're going to see 16.1 million K-12 students are possibly going to be taught by an unprepared or inexperienced teacher. Megan's already shared with you that we've seen a decline of 23% in terms of teachers that are completing educator preparatory programs. But by 2030, we actually may see 42% fewer that are actually completing those programs. So how do we do this? What's the deal? Well, one of the things we like to do is we come and tell people, here's the data, but like any good Marvel movie, we want to come in and tell you also, here's a way you could win. So Megan in particular has done a lot of work. We've had the opportunity with some grants, and we actually have a new grant to do this with some more states, where we go in and facilitate a really deep dive on what do they really want to do to improve their teacher workforce. And through that work and through the research and literature that we've reviewed, we've kind of come up with a blueprint of some things that would be key. I'm going to be clear here and say these are things that can be done at the state level. Megan and I are talking about some things that need to be done at the district and school level as well. It's really important that as much as at the state level we have good policies that facilitate the recruitment and retention of good teachers, we also make sure that our teachers are being treated the way they should be at the school building level. Things like using a schedule as punishment or reward is not really where you need to be. So we're going to be talking about that internally and having another publication on that at some point too. So as we see it, there are really 4 pieces to this puzzle: pathways and preparation, professional supports, licensure, and compensation. Those 4 things are going to be important as we move forward. Everybody loves to talk about pay, and believe me, when you're the one receiving the paycheck, you want to see that paycheck go up. But there's also other items that are making what I believe, and no offense to anybody in the room that may not be an educator, but to me, the greatest and most noble profession of education has a much bigger complexity than simply let's raise the pay. So we talk about pathways and preparation, having a variety of entry points, but yet have a high standard. So the temptation when you have a shortage is, well, let's lower the standards to get more bodies in the classroom. Well, it's sort of like when you talk about rigor so much that it becomes rigor mortis. There comes a point where you've got to actually think about the fact we need more people, but we need them to be better. Licensure, looking at systems that actually scaffold up based on teacher skills, competency, and impact, and that actually aligns with the pay. Professional supports is the opportunity strong teachers have to maximize their talents, to be flexible, have flexible class sizes and support staff to really get what they need. And then, of course, compensation. And compensation, to be clear, when SREB talks about compensation, we're not talking about the pay. We're talking about the overall compensation package the way you would in a business environment. When you get offered a job in the business environment, it is your pay, but it's also here's what your benefits with regard to health, with regard to retirement are. So looking at those packages are really important. It's interesting as we continue to grow as a profession, the people who are in the profession right now tend to have a little bit different perspective on the profession than those who we're trying to recruit into the profession. I know when I went into the profession back in 91, 92, I didn't think about a career ladder. At that point, I thought I was going to teach high school science for the next 40 years of my life. I didn't necessarily plan on this little policy excursion that I've been on the last 20 years, but it happened. But especially our younger generation that's coming in, they're wanting to know, how can I actually grow in this job? I don't want to be a principal. Not that we don't need great principals, but there we have teachers that say, I don't want to be one. I actually just want to grow in my career. So having a conversation really in depth that of how a career can progress is a really important thing. And of course, this has to do with all 4 of those pieces of that puzzle. When we look at data, data is one of those things that we wish we had more of. But we also need to realize we also have a lot of data, but the question is it useful data? So actually having conversation about what do we really want to know? So our best practices for data, does the state produce new teacher supply data? Does it produce demand data? Does your state disaggregate supply and demand to the institution, district, and certification level? Do you report shortages? Do you publish teacher mobility? Does your state actually make school-level aggregates of teacher performance data publicly available? On average, SREB has less than half of those 6 practices within those states. And you can see nobody is doing it, is hitting all of those marks. Data is important. If without data, we can't make good decisions. And so this isn't a way to try to punish anybody or make anybody look bad. It's a way to just be honest with yourself. With regard to the recent American Rescue Plan, or ESSER, states can support districts by providing for planning and implementation around the COVID recovery money. When all this started, one of the things that we were really concerned with and shared over multiple webinars and meetings with legislators and state school chiefs was that we'd have all this money, but we didn't necessarily have a lot of deliberation about that money. So these are opportunities that you could actually have And obviously the money, the time limit is becoming more of a concern about when it runs out. And I think there's a lot of people trying to get extensions on allowing districts to spend that money. But when you think about really looking forward about how this funding was utilized, my biggest concern is when we look back on it, we say, oh, good, we bought a bunch of computers, we bought a bunch of technology, now it's kind of sitting in a stockroom somewhere, but we didn't necessarily do anything to make the plight of our teachers better. Just a spotlight on South Carolina. From what we can see, y'all are using ESSER funds to collaborate with institutions of higher ed to employ college students as summer teaching interns. That's more opportunities for students and to give the teachers more experience. And looking to address teacher shortages by developing pipelines of new talent, attracting diverse candidates, and launching communications platform to promote new pathways into the profession. So we stand ready to help you at all times. As I'm closing out, I'm just simply going to again remind you that this is hard work. No great education idea ever died in the vision phase. You know, it dies in implementation. So the work that you're doing, I would recommend you always give strong thought to what is this going to look like after you finish your work? How will it be implemented? How will you put the guardrails in place to make sure that this wonderful profession that is not just an education problem, it is actually a workforce problem. I think, in fact, part of my concern and our concern at SREB in general is we treat this as an education issue, and it's not. It's a workforce issue. Because I can guarantee you, if we continue to lose teachers the way we are, we're going to be in the same place nurses are in our country right now, where we can't find enough nurses to go in to actual hospitals, but we also can't find enough to teach the future generation of nurses. So again, we're right back to teaching. Our workforce and our economy really depends on us having a robust teacher workforce to be able to prepare people for the next generation and for the next level of workforce. So with that, you having a problem with this thing? Thank you. And we didn't even practice that. Maybe we've done this a couple of times. But I just want to say thank you. I'm not sure that we're going to be able to stick around to the very end for your questions, but I think we have can you click that for me or wherever?
Dr. Pruitt?
Yes.
Is this available so that our members can have your presentation?
It's on that computer,
Okay.
but we're also happy to email it to everybody if you'd like it. We
Okay.
are more than happy to do that.
Okay, if we can save that and be able to send it to each one of our members and those that are not here in person today to do. Thank you very much. You have about 3 minutes left. Is there a 3-minute question here?
One thing real quick is also you see that link has
Yes.
all of this documentation and a more full report on the blueprint.
Wonderful.
Go ahead.
So definitely under 3 minutes, but it's a two-part question. Do you guys have any data the non-certified emergency caught my eye because there's legislation that would look to do that. Obviously, we don't have it yet. So what data do you guys have about the retention rate for those non-certifieds? And then the other question would be, do you have any data on the effect of class size on teacher retention rates? Because all the research seems to be about impact on student achievement. As a classroom teacher, I think that there's probably a strong correlation between your class size or max student load and your retention rate, but I've yet to find the good report to point to.
Well, as a former chemistry teacher who used to have to work with nitric acid, I can tell you my class size was always a concern for me, because if I couldn't get to somebody quickly with something, it was a problem. I don't know that we have some of that data because that's some of the stuff that people are not reporting. Megan?
There are many states who do report, but there are many states who do not. Some of the states who do report have actually studied this issue. They've studied the retention rates of those emergency or uncertified. They've studied retention rates of those from traditional versus alternative preparation, as well as some states have studied the effectiveness of these different pieces. And the states who have studied unequivocally have said that retention, yes, is lower for emergency uncertified, as well as alternatively prepared teachers, and effectiveness rates, of course, are lower as well.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pruitt, very much. And Megan, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you for having us.
We do look forward to sharing all of this information with those that are here today and those that were unable to come. Thank you for making the trip and have a safe trip back.
Thank you. We'll be here through the break, so if you want to
Okay,
catch us at the break, that'd be
very
great.
good. That's good. Thank you, sir. We've had one other member to come in. If you will introduce yourself.
Good morning. I apologize, coming from Spartanburg in traffic. My name is Mark Manigo, and I'm representing SCABC.
Wonderful. Everybody else, we'll move right along then. Our next presentation is on the WebAR. It is a presentation by our Education Commission of States, ECS, and we have Tiffany McDowell, who is joining us. Tiffany, welcome this morning, and you have Damian Petrarca with you also. Very good. Welcome.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for having us. I just want to make sure you can hear us okay.
We do. We hear you.
Fantastic. Well, Damien's going to share our slides for us. Thank you all so much for having us this morning. And I want to express appreciation to our partners at SRB for laying the groundwork so well about the teacher shortages. I think you'll find that our information is very much complementary and builds upon what you've already heard this morning. Damien and I are joining you from Education Commission of the States. And before we dive into the presentation, I'm just going to make sure our screen share can get going.
Hi, this is Damien. Unfortunately, I can't seem to share the slides.
We see you, Damien.
Damien, let me see if I can share them, just in case.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay, did that work?
Your presentation is now on the screen and we see both of you, barely.
Fabulous. That sounds like the right place to start. Well, thank you again for having us today. We are really thrilled to join you. My name is Tiffany McDowell. I am a policy director here at Education Commission of the States, and pleased to be joined by Damien. I'll let Damien say hello as well.
Yeah, and my name is Damien Pachota. I'm a senior policy analyst with Education Commission of the States, and it's great to be here today.
I also want to mention that our colleague Ben Zumbalin is on the live stream. He is the state relations liaison for the state of South Carolina. So you may see his name via email, or if you have future questions, he's always a great resource. Before we get started on the content, Damien and I wanted to share a little bit about who ECS is, because in addition to being here to tell you all about our knowledge and research around teacher shortages, we want to make sure you know who we are so you can contact us for future support if that would be useful for you. We are a national nonprofit education policy organization. We serve all 50 states and DC and have been doing so for over 60 years. We are nonpartisan, unbiased, and we cover the full spectrum of education policy issues from early childhood through post-secondary and the workforce. We do this by convening policymakers because we believe that it's important to learn from experience. We also study state trends and approaches so policymakers might know what others are trying and what others are learning, and we can have the best of what is known across the country. And we do these services through four main buckets of work. The first is that we conduct independent research and produce reports on important education policy topics. We also host convenings such as conferences or topical convenings on issues such as teacher shortages, and provide independent and tailored counsel to states, such as the experience we're having with you all today and any follow-up conversations that might be useful to you. So we are more than happy to join you today. We're also happy to support you in the future, and we hope you'll keep ECS in mind as your work progresses. With that, we're going to turn our attention to the content. We know that recruiting and retaining great teachers is critically important because teachers are the single most important factor in student outcomes. With the knowledge that teachers matter so immensely for students, both their academic well-being and their overall well-being, policymakers, of course, are committed to ensuring that there are enough high-quality teachers in our schools. And as you heard from our colleagues at SREB, there are actually two challenges there, a quantity challenge and a quality challenge. And you'll hear us reference that throughout our presentation as well today. In terms of the national landscape around shortages, what we tend to see is that rather than a generalized teacher shortage, the shortages are most concentrated and specific to subject areas, schools, and localities. These shortages are also incredibly persistent. So in terms of subject areas, shortages tend to be most severe in subjects such as math, science, special education. In terms of schools, schools that are historically under-resourced tend to have more severe shortages. And then specific localities, the more isolated or rural a school is, the shortages tend to be more severe, as well as certain urban areas have severe shortages. Distance from an educational prep program also seems to be a driver in terms of the intensity of shortages. When these factors overlap, shortages get even more intense. So for example, an upper level math position in a very rural community might be a very hard vacancy to fill. I want to emphasize at this point that these shortages are also incredibly persistent. While there is growing attention to this issue area, the challenges of the teacher labor market have persisted over the past several decades. Many of these trends are worsening. However, there are lessons from policy attempts in the past several decades that we can learn from today to have a better sense of what has been tried and not worked so well and what has been tried and seems promising. So we'll bring those lessons to bear throughout the presentation. In terms of scale, a recent study showed that there are nearly 40,000 vacancies nationally in the teacher labor market. And this is specific to teachers. This isn't educators more broadly, including paraprofessionals and service providers that we know are so important for students as well. In addition to those 40,000 vacancies, we estimate that there are over 100,000 underqualified teachers. Underqualified here meaning not fully certified or certified but teaching out of the area of certification. These numbers show that quality and quantity tension again, right? It's not just the vacancies, it's the underqualification, the lack of preparation that is concerning in terms of the landscape of the shortage. This study also did look at South Carolina. SRAB went into some of those numbers earlier today, but in the 2021-22 school year, the estimate was that South Carolina had around 900 teacher vacancies and 600 underqualified teachers. Our understanding is that the estimate for 22-23 reported at least 1,200 teaching vacancies, demonstrating a continuing trend of worsening vacancies in the state over the past several years. While that is worrying, I want you to know you're not alone. That's a trend that many states are facing.
As you've heard, unfortunately, we know that these shortages have a significant impact on schools and students. First, they are costly. Replacing a teacher can cost anywhere between $10,000 and $20,000 in some districts. Shortages have a negative impact on teacher workforce quality, school climate, and student outcomes. And finally, shortages tend to have the largest impact on schools and students who can least afford it. Knowing that shortages tend to be specific to certain positions, costly, and persistent, what does research suggest we should do? As best as we know, effective policy solutions will require recruiting the right teachers for the right schools and the right positions. This can be done through targeted policy approaches rather than in a general approach. But who are the right teachers? This is a complicated question, but policymakers should consider teacher diversity as a critical aspect in this conversation. Research tells us that teachers of color reduce the absences and suspensions, improve test scores, hold higher expectations for students, and increase gifted and talented referrals. And we also want to keep in mind that finding the right teachers is impacted by geography, since each state and district is operating within its own unique labor market. In addition to prioritizing targeted recruitment and retention policies, research suggests making positive changes will require a comprehensive approach. At Education Commission of the States, we conceptualize the teacher pipeline as beginning with recruitment and extending through retention. We visualize 4 main stages: interest in the field, initial preparation and certification, early career support, and career advancement. We also elevate working conditions and support as a key piece of each stage in this pipeline. No matter how you conceptualize the pipeline in your state, we can all agree that teacher quality, including a diverse workforce, is a priority in every stage. So without further ado, we will share some of the findings from our updated 50-state comparison on teacher recruitment and retention. This resource is unique because it compiles state-specific data on teacher shortages and provides a national comparison of state policies to recruit and retain teachers, especially in shortage subject areas and underserved schools.
Thanks, Damien. I want to mention here that you should be receiving the link to this resource. In addition to looking at all 50 states, you can look at the South Carolina specific profile to see the statute and regulation that we found as of last year was on the books related to these topics. The first section in our report is about data. As you heard from SREB, data is critically important because this helps us craft targeted policy solutions and then to study whether or not they are working. So we took a look at what states had in terms of data related to teacher shortages and found that almost every state, in fact, we were only able to find 9 states without publicly reported shortage data, have some type of information around teacher vacancies and teacher shortages. While most states have some type of data in this area, I would say that almost every state we've worked with expresses frustration with what they have available, particularly the timeliness and the utility of that information. So for example, while almost everyone is publishing information around shortages at some level, we only found that 10 states and the District of Columbia were able to disaggregate their information by race, which could provide a better understanding of teacher diversity within the state context. For your consideration, we wanted to bring forward 2 examples of state reports that might be useful as your work progresses and you move through the task force. The first comes from Maryland, which released a comprehensive report on teacher supply, demand, and diversity, including state and local data on key metrics across the teacher pipeline. This particular report can disaggregate attrition data by district and years of experience, can disaggregate vacancies by district and certification area, can look at educator prep program enrollment data, and data on conditional certificates awarded by district. The report also pairs that data with highlighting state policies that address recruitment and retention challenges, as well as policy recommendations. The other example we wanted to bring forward comes from North Carolina. Something that we studied in the 50-state comparison was states that had some type of working conditions or retention survey to better understand the factors that are driving turnover from a teacher perspective. We found that 28 states have some type of published survey in that area, and 1 state has a survey underway. In the North Carolina survey, it may be worth noting that teachers identified the 5 most pressing issues from their perspective that face their schools and impact their willingness to stay in the classroom long term. The first was addressing disparities in student learning. The second is addressing staffing shortages, staffing being more comprehensive there, including substitute teachers. The third is assessing student performance and need. The fourth is social emotional support for students. And the fifth was the health and safety of teachers and staff. So that is a pretty wide range of issue areas, and I know it probably feels much broader than the scope of teacher recruitment and retention. But that type of information has been helpful for state policymakers understanding the breadth of working conditions that might be drivers of teacher turnover and willingness to come into the profession initially.
The second area of focus that we looked at is interest in the field and initial preparation. To better understand how states create a pathway into the teaching profession, we looked at programs designed for high school students and paraprofessionals, as well as teacher residency programs. To better understand how states create these pathways, this map shows a variety of different things, so I'll give you a second to look at it. But initially what we found is that 31 states and the District of Columbia offer a pathway, program, or incentive through statute or regulation to recruit high school students into the teaching profession. While 25 states and the District of Columbia have a policy to recruit paraprofessionals into the teaching profession. These programs can take different forms, including dual enrollment pathways, grow your own programs, apprenticeships, residencies, or more traditional scholarship programs. Grow Your Own has garnered interest and attention as a pathway for high school students or current paraprofessionals to enter the teaching profession. So we want to highlight a couple of those programs. Grow Your Own Illinois is a competitive grant program that has been around since 2005. It offers funding to support partnerships between districts, post-secondary institutions, and community organizations to identify and support individuals in the community in becoming teachers. New Mexico's Grow Your Own Teacher Act created a similar program in 2021 to award scholarship to paraprofessionals. Some states have used ESSER funds to establish Grow Your Own programs or residencies, while others have adapted programs outside of the policy to establish registered teacher apprenticeship programs.
The next portion of our report as we move through the teacher pipeline is about early career support. We wanted to dedicate specific attention to this issue area as the turnover rate is so much higher within the first 5 years. I believe the SREB data shared today showed up to 45% in southern states of teachers turnover within the first 5 years of their career. These types of early career supports are especially important for state policymakers to consider in the context of the expansion of alternative certification programs, particularly those that lack a clinical experience component, as those early career years are all the more sensitive, both in terms of instructional quality and potential turnover. Across states, we found 31 states, shaded here in purple, who require some type of induction and mentoring support for new teachers in statute or regulation. But the length of these programs and the requirements of them vary greatly across states. As two examples, the Utah State Board established a rule requiring 3 years of induction and developed a comprehensive guidebook to support local implementation of those induction programs. That guidebook highlights best practices and research around effective induction and mentoring. We're also aware of many statewide programs that exist, but outside of statute or regulation. So for example, you'll see Alaska is not shaded here, but Alaska's statewide mentorship program, which receives some state funding, is well recognized for its results in improving the retention of early career teachers. That program employs rigorously selected retired teachers as full-time mentors for first and second year teachers. Mentors use formative assessment practices to guide their mentorship activities, and the program has, as I mentioned, some demonstrated success. We'd be happy to share some of their reports with you.
We also included metrics on licensure advancement and teacher leadership to better account for each stage of this pipeline. We wanted to highlight some of these state examples. So 31 states have a licensure system that allows teachers to advance beyond a standard professional license. Two good state examples are Oklahoma and the District of Columbia. During this legislative session, Oklahoma permitted its, in the previous legislative session, Oklahoma permitted its State Board of Education to develop advanced lead and master teaching certificates with a salary increase for each level. Similarly, the District of Columbia teachers are able to progress along the Leadership Initiative for Teachers career ladder and earn a base salary increase after reaching the next certification level. Teachers are also able to serve as teacher leaders as part of the Teacher Leadership Innovation Program. Teacher leaders earn additional compensation through coaching and supporting their colleagues, which helps to improve instructional quality throughout their school.
The final section of the study looks at financial incentives and compensation, and I should be clear that we narrowed our scope here to just the financial aspect of compensation, not a holistic look at benefits and other components. This section of the study is quite long and a bit wonky, so rather than walk you through each of the data points, we wanted to point you to some high-level information and hope you'll dig in if you're interested. This section studies particular state programs, including if state statute outlines minimum teacher pay, if statute outlines scholarships, loan forgiveness, grants, or bonuses to help recruit teachers to shortage schools, or subject areas. If state financial incentives are specifically designed for the recruitment of teachers of color, and if states require or provide additional pay for advanced licensure and/or national board certification. Across these policy questions and options, research does not point us to one type of financial incentives, perhaps outside of base compensation, that is more effective than the other. So for example, loan forgiveness can be effective or ineffective, scholarships can be effective or ineffective. The common strand in the effective programs is that they are sufficient, sustained, and paired with improvements to working conditions. So sufficient meaning substantial. A $250 grant or bonus is not likely to induce much change in behavior compared to a $5,000 bonus or grant. Sustained, as in it's not one time. If a bonus is designed to attract a teacher to a shortage subject area, a shortage school, that needs to be a year-over-year bonus, not a one-time movement bonus, in order to be effective in retaining that person. And then in terms of pairing with working conditions, money alone is not going to get us out of this challenge in terms of teacher shortages. So seeing the financial incentives paired with things like changes in school climate, addressing workload tends to be more effective. With that in mind, Damien and I wanted to close out, now that we've walked through each stage of the pipeline, by returning us to the more comprehensive vision. Because we see time and time again that making change in this area requires a comprehensive approach across every stage of the pipeline, including acknowledging that working conditions and support, including compensation, impact both the recruitment and retention of teachers. We know that state policymakers have been grappling with these challenges for quite some time, and having support at each and every stage of the pipeline will be vital to addressing our long-term teacher shortages, which, as you heard earlier, the teacher workforce is the workforce that begets every other workforce. So having a strong educator workforce is so important for our economies and our state's livelihoods. We also want to close by re-emphasizing that shortages tend to be specific, and the policies that have had the most success in addressing these shortages tend to be tailored to those specific needs. So policies that boost recruitment or retention in general are not bad. We can certainly all benefit from those, but they're unlikely to solve for the persistent gaps we see in specific subject areas, specific schools, and specific locations. And of course, it's not just about quantity. Ensuring quality teaching at every stage of the pipeline is, of course, a priority we all share. With that, we want to close out and say thank you so much for having us, and that we hope you'll keep ECS in mind. Hopefully the research you saw today gives you a sense of the type of support we can provide in terms of state policy examples, a sense of what others are trying, what others are learning. In addition to receiving the slides today, you'll also be receiving a list of sample ECS resources on the topic of teacher recruitment and retention. In addition to the 50-state comparison we walked you through today, we also have several others, including a 50-state comparison on license reciprocity and employment conditions, as well as several policy briefs and sample information requests, which are pieces of tailored research we provide to policymakers on individual and specific questions. So with that, we'll close out, and Damien and I are glad to answer questions if there's time for that. Otherwise, we'll be happy to answer them in follow-up.
Thank you, Tiffany and Damien. We appreciate your presentation, and we do have the availability for this to be emailed to each one of our members, and we thank you for that. We have maybe a minute for any burning question right now. If not, thank you again, Tiffany and Damien, and we look forward to really delving into your materials that you've provided for us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Our next presentation is by our South Carolina Education Deans Alliance, and that's Dr. Tracy West, who will be presenting to us. And she was here bright and early this morning, too. We want to thank you for being with us
You're
today.
very, very welcome, very welcome. Again, first and foremost, thank you for the opportunity. I stand here representing a collective of education preparation providers across the state, 3 of my esteemed colleagues sitting in the room with me here today. But obviously, I also stand here with personal views on education as a product of public education, a mother of 2 children who, my second will be graduating from the public school systems here in South Carolina in less than 6 months. Yes, please say a little prayer for this empty nester. I have been a public school teacher in both North and South Carolina, and I had the distinguished opportunity to serve as a State Board of Education member for 2 years, and then now serve as a dean of an educator preparation program. So I feel like I've had the bird's eye view from lots of various vantage points, but as the chairperson stated today, I will be trying to represent the broader group of education preparation providers around the state. So again, thank you for that. And thank you for, I think, the foundation of being able to stand before you and talk about all of the amazing ways that the various institutions in our state are doing exactly what we've heard today needs to be done. And hopefully I'll be able to highlight some of that innovation and opportunities to continue to grow and innovate as we look at the pipeline. So does this work? Okay. Or do I need a Vanna? Okay. So we're praying. I think we skipped a slide. Or not. So there is a slide that has a lovely number on it, the number 39. And I will not quiz the body in front of me, but just so you know, there are currently 39 approved routes in South Carolina into the classroom. 30 of those are housed in education preparation provider programs at institutions of higher ed, and 9 of those are alternative. And the exciting part about the increasing number of the alternative routes is that we are seeing more of those associated with state and nationally approved programs found in institutions of higher education. So as we talk about education, there is a lot of conversation about teacher preparation, which the words teacher quality have been used, teacher effectiveness, and as we look at how that teacher quality is developed, obviously it comes back to our homes in teacher preparation. So we want to be sure that this body understands the pathway we follow to ensure that we are committed to quality. We are not sitting at various colleges and universities around the state just making up programs to provide based on what we think our teachers need in South Carolina, but we are following a very rigorous set of regulations that come to us from multiple bodies. So we are meeting various layers of requirements. And as you know, hopefully, that South Carolina is a specialty program area or a SPA state. Therefore, we do have the national accreditation requirements of the Council for the Accreditation of Educator Preparation. Those are outlined for you there. Lots of information that I'm sure our friends at the State Department or any of us in higher ed could share. In addition, we have a state regulatory process that requires that we are touching on so many different variables that do impact what happens in a public school classroom. So if you think about the national requirements, and then we layer on all of those required here in the state, as well as preparing our candidates for how they will be evaluated and held accountable once they are in the public schools with our South Carolina Teaching Standards 4.0 model, as well as other agency requirements depending upon the institution where you work. Those could include the Commission on Higher Education for program review, and all of our institutions, every program within each college and university also has to meet institution requirements. So that's a pretty large bill to fill, so to speak. But I think it's important for everyone to understand that we are committed to that quality and we are bound to meet the requirements as outlined in these various layers of regulation. But with that comes what we do as educators. We are committed to data-driven improvements. That is what guides the work we do, no matter if you're sitting in the upstate at Anderson, and the PD over at Francis Marion, right around the corner at University of South Carolina, or right up the road at Columbia College. We are all committed to continuous improvement, and we do this in various ways. I already mentioned the formal national accreditation piece, which you can see the cycle there at the bottom of the slide that's required. But I think it's more important to look at what we do ongoing within our programs. And that is not only required by the state with an annual review of the data that we are able to access through the data reporting systems, which we would like to thank the state for making improvements in that system with our new SC leads. That is definitely a step in the right direction to give us access to that data. But we also look specifically at the national testing data that allows us to look at specific competencies that our candidates have or can continue to improve in. And that information is found within the licensure exams of Praxis 2 and the Principles of Learning and Teaching. Those do have direct correlation to potential effectiveness in the classroom. I know that there is a lot of conversation in our state about the requirement of the Praxis Core examination as an entrance into the undergraduate teacher education pipeline. I would like to note we do not, personally, I can only speak for Columbia College, I will not speak for my colleagues, we do not analyze that data looking at how we can make adjustments to our educator preparation program. We do monitor passage rates. We do provide additional resources to our candidates, but that is a basic skills assessment that the high schools from where these individuals have graduated hold some responsibility for those foundational skills, but we also have to think about the candidate pool in which we're working. So there was a slide by the previous presenter that talked about the pathways of specific focuses, and my apologies if I get this incorrect, but there was a slide there that talked about recruitment efforts targeting high school students, and there was an option for paraprofessionals, and if you had both, your state would have been gray, and our state was not gray, but we do have specific pipelines targeting those folks already. And when you're working with a 50-year-old paraprofessional who hasn't been in a public or a formal classroom setting as a student in more than 30 years, and then we're handing them a standardized test, that I encourage you to look at the Praxis Core. I sat down and took the Praxis Core with a group of students. That was a little humbling in math because I had not done some of those skills in quite a while. But again, are we using that data to make data-driven decisions in our programs to prepare our teachers? And we're not with that particular test. And it is a costly test for those students that do have to take it multiple times. But the Praxis 2 and the PLT, they do provide us good information to look at how to be responsive to needs. In addition, we sit and listen to the choir, so to speak, and we look at our employers, our partners, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. We each collect graduate and employer survey data, and we use that information. We use what's happening in our schools to make those continuous improvement adjustments to our programs that allow us to be responsive to the needs of the public schools in South Carolina. But the most important piece of that information that we are able to analyze really comes from the larger group of our constituents. The relationships with the folks that are boots on the ground, from our superintendents that sit on different consortium groups, our HR offices. I know our Midlands Educator Effectiveness Roundtable brings together human resources. So there are different consortiums of folks that are giving feedback that we then take back to our programs. We are required as part of our accreditation process to co-construct our programs. That means using the professionals in the fields. We all have stakeholder groups that are part of not only our governance, but also helping co-construct our programs to ensure that they are valid, that they are representing what a classroom teacher in South Carolina needs to be doing in 2023, because it's very different even than what a classroom teacher needed to be doing in South Carolina public classrooms 5 years ago. We also reverse that role, and we support our local district partners by serving on school improvement councils. We have professional development school partnerships, all types of unique relationships that give us the exchange of information to guide our program and our continuous improvement model. I've already mentioned our alums, and I know that we have different routes in which we follow and support our alums. We have wonderful models that support the induction that our districts are providing, one of those being the Teacher Induction Program, or TIP, at the University of South Carolina. And then we have informal programs that each of our institutions do. Columbia College has an initiative called First to Five, and we bring those folks back to campus. We hold focus groups. We have them for dinner. We have faculty that are assigned to those cohorts, and they're struggling, as we know. So we are trying to increase the support that we can give them in addition to the supports that you're providing them in your local schools. And then within our educator preparation programs, all of our faculty, for the most part, are very actively involved and even leaders in professional organizations around the state. We are thankful for our partnerships with PSTA and SCEA. The Palmetto State Teachers Association allows us to do a group membership to bring all of our faculty involved. Patrick does an amazing job communicating about the works that take place here at the State House, because it's hard to bridge both of those worlds when you are engaged every day with students at your own institution. So all of these are relationships that are valuable to what we do in higher education. And all of this information and these opportunities allow us to continue to innovate what we do to be responsive. We are increasingly adding to the curriculum that we are trying to present to our candidates to prepare them for the realities of that 2023 classroom that I just mentioned. There's a lot of talk, and you hear the stories about classroom management and concerns of how classrooms are being run. I heard a question about class size. The number of students in a space with one adult obviously impacts the overall environment, or the settings of that environment. But we continue to revise how we are presenting the best practice content and pedagogy to our candidates. I've had the opportunity to sit on another task force that met on Monday with Senator Hembree and Representative McGinnis, and there was a question that our group was asked, and they wanted the members of higher ed to inform the body how higher ed influences what's happening in education. And we looked at that for a second and very quickly thought that question needs to be flipped, because what's happening in education influences what we do in higher education as we are working to be responsive. So we continue to provide new information. I heard the previous presenters talk about the things that teachers are overwhelmed with, and one was meeting the various needs of learners, one was assessing learner needs, and another mentioned the social emotional needs of the students in the classroom. When I took my classroom management course at East Carolina in 1986, there was no social emotional component to managing a classroom. You had rules, you had consequences, you taught. But we're in a different place today. So we have to continue to innovate and update the curriculum that we're providing to our candidates to prepare them for the classroom. And a big part of that, again, as mentioned by the previous presenters, is making sure that our students know how to differentiate instruction, making sure that they are seeing a universal design not only being modeled on our campus, but also preparing them for the classroom. And part of the innovation, I think, that is most important, because everyone continues to talk about experience. And we can give them content knowledge and pedagogical knowledge, but at Columbia College, I cannot give them the experience of working with students without my district partners. So the experience of the clinical or the field experience, depending upon the institutions, we do call it different things, different places. But each of our programs has a very diverse field experience model that looks at providing kind of that deep dive into the classroom through some immersive engagement and some specifically outlined requirements. But even with the traditional field experiences that our teaching fellow in the room may have or have just experienced at Clemson, we also continue to innovate and be responsive as we've partnered with the state to open up the internship certificate option to give you that quality college senior that is ready to be in their own classroom, that doesn't need that final formal directed teaching experience. We have teacher residencies in our state. We do have a nationally recognized and approved apprenticeship program in the state of South Carolina. There is one. I am very humble and proud to say that it is at Columbia College with our Alternative Pathway to Educator certification. It is an alternative route, but it at least opened the door with the United States Department of Labor. And we all continue with this field work to focus on building teacher resiliency. That's not something we can assess on a Praxis 2 or a PLT. But as we're asking teachers to step into the classroom and work through challenges that we're all talking about across various platforms, how do we build and develop that sense of resiliency? And that's a very kind of an intangible idea, but it's something that is important. And we talk about that a lot in our First to Five group with our recent alums, because they are leaving. We do know that. The first year I sat on the State Board of Education, I think we might have had 3 or 4 cases that came before us for one meeting. And when I rolled off, we had a 2-page list of folks that it was breach of contract. And they're just walking away. And as a woman of my age, in my career that I've had for my generation, that was never an option for me. But there are options with this generation. And not only are there options, there are demands that they have about how to progress through the profession. So I applaud the conversations that are being had about teacher leadership and how we can provide that for them without having to send them into administration. I'm sorry, I went off on a little bit of a different topic there, but that's something I feel very, very passionately about. We do have multiple entry points into the profession here in South Carolina. We have various examples of that, some of those partnerships that do target working professionals within the schools. I'll talk about the CREATE program that the state has had for almost 20 years plus now. But we also continue to innovate with unique, partnerships that mean something more in the areas in which our institutions are housed. So around the state, we have various institutions of higher ed designed to meet the needs of those communities. So you see examples of 2+2 partnerships with technical colleges. You see examples of dual enrollment pathways into the profession, starting in the junior year when our high school students can begin taking dual enrollment classes, making it easier for them, to get into the classroom. Back in, I believe it was October when the meeting was called, but you're probably aware that our state has invested funds with partnerships between institutions of higher ed and districts to develop new Grow Your Own initiatives through additional funding. So we are innovating. We want to innovate more, But unfortunately, there are some barriers to that additional innovation that we do not have control over. So when we think about increasing the pool, we are not talking about lowering standards. We are talking about needing flexibility to allow people to demonstrate their high standards in various ways. I mentioned a moment ago talking about the entrance requirement for the Praxis Core. We do have a large percentage of students that enter into four-year programs, whether they transfer in with an associate's or they come straight in, or they do an alternative or a non-traditional, not alternative, a non-traditional entry through a partnership like Create, or just coming in as a career changer. We look at the entire student. If a student transfers to Columbia College with an associate's degree, they've taken some college coursework in math and in English. At Columbia College, they're also taking additional coursework. We've had proposals in the past at the state level to allow the colleges and universities to develop an alternative plan to allow us to look beyond those that do not perform well on standardized tests that have been proven to be biased to certain groups. So I believe that if our programs were allowed to develop a plan in response to a person's performance on the Praxis Core, again, with guidelines there, but currently we can't do that because of the entrance requirements at the undergraduate initial level. There is a process in place to have new programs approved in our state, and I absolutely respect and work very, very closely with our friends at the State Department of Education, but that process is a process. And oversight and accountability are very, very important. But I have a dean in the area that is moving a new program through, and I believe she shared that that program would be approved at the February or March meeting. And this is, I believe, month 15. So when we're asked to be responsive, and you've got to back that month 15 up a little bit to give us time to develop the program and move through our institution oversight process, you could be looking at 2 years before you can respond to a need that a partner district has identified. But that takes people. And the offices that oversee these programs, they are small offices. So again, how much capacity do they have to allow us to move more quickly? And again, that's not a higher education solution. I'm not saying that it's a problem, but not a higher education response, because that's outside of the framework in which we act. And then there are legislative mandates that do impact not only the recruitment of some of our students, but also the work in which we do. And one of those that I know, and I appreciate the state going back and revisiting, is the Read to Succeed legislation. We firmly understand and have embedded the science of reading in what we do. I will say, as Tracy West, not even the Dean of Education at Columbia College, this is just me, the mom, speaking, that those 4 classes, check a box, grab a course where you can model, is not what we do in higher education. And as we look at exams to validate someone's ability to teach reading, I would just ask this body to do what they can to share at the higher level of the state, that the cost of that additional testing, and for our elementary certifiers, looking at up to 6 licensure exams, that before we continue to add additional exams, we do need to look at the content of those that are being required currently.
Dr. West, we really appreciate your presentation today. It's been very enlightening. And as a former legislator for more years than I want to think, I am glad to hear you say that higher education, schools of education, and K through 12 are working together for the benefit of our future teachers. Because as a legislator in visiting schools across the state and talking with teachers and that kind of thing, a lot of our teachers have said, I wasn't prepared to enter the classroom. And I think that probably is another reason that we are seeing young people who go into teaching and get in there and 2 or 3 years down the line, they're moving on to another profession or another entity within an education. I think it is conducive for this state, be the legislator, higher ed, or K through 12, that there needs to continue that relationship and that working together is what is actually happening in the classroom. What am I actually having to contend with on a day-to-day basis? Did I, when I got my training and my education, was I introduced to any of that? I'm glad to hear that that is progressing and going on, because we have heard a lot of our teachers say, and these are young teachers that have just gone into the profession. So
Absolutely.
thank you for that.
Yeah.
And thank you for this presentation, and I hope that we will have privy to give this to others that are not here today. in
Yes,
that.
ma'am. And I would just like to, I thank you for that comment and that insight based on your experience. And I think it's important to understand that when these new teachers say, I was not prepared, we have to define prepared for what.
Right.
Because that content, that pedagogy, and those very limited field experiences that we can provide are a different glimpse into the realities of being a classroom teacher on your own, behind the doors, for those 180 days per year. So I know that there's additional information there that we were not able to go over, but I encourage you particularly to look at the slide that is projected, and then leave you with the important takeaways there that we want to continue that partnership.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we will make sure that all of our members and those that are online with us today get a copy of everything you bring. Thank you for the work that you do. Any questions before she leaves the podium? Okay, we're going to take a quick 5-minute break. The restrooms are right out the door here, and then we're going to come back and we're going to be hearing from our Dean of Education at the University of South Carolina, Dr. Tommy Hodges, who's going to be talking about our SC teacher working online. So if you got to go, quick. Or stand up. Good to have you here.
Good to be here.
How are you doing? Good. Are you traveling all over the place? That is wonderful, though,
And
because.
you make sure you take care of yourself, buddy.
Yeah, that's right. With the in and out and all the.
Self-care
Be
is very-
careful. And I hope that, I did get a text from Dr. Nielsen that she is watching and listening, and we certainly hope that our others are.
I get a lot.
We're moving on now to our South Carolina teacher on working conditions, South Carolina teacher, and to present to us, and I think he already has a handout, but we will be making sure that all of you are emailed these presentations. Dr. Tommy Hodges is with us today, and Dr. Hodges, thank you for sitting on this committee, and also thank you for presenting to us today about South Carolina teacher.
Thank you so much, and I'll try to get us back on schedule and try and keep my remarks brief. I'm excited a little bit about what I get to share with you all today because you're getting a first look at a rebrand for SC Teacher too. So if you notice a new logo and a little bit of a new color scheme up there. So excited you all are getting a quick glance at something that's going to be rolled out over the coming weeks and months. So if you've seen some of the reports that SC Teacher has done in the past, this looks a little bit different, and we're excited to do that and excited to launch that here today. So for those of you that having the same issue everybody else did.
She is.
Oh, yeah.
She's getting
There
a
we
little bit of wave, and she
So
is.
if you're not familiar with SC Teacher, I'll give you a little bit of a background on it. It was formed about 5 years ago as a place to reconcile data from multiple sources, including
Before that, or at least maybe get an extension on the.
I think somebody that's online needs to mute there. Did we get it? Okay, sorry.
No, it's totally fine. It began about 5 years ago as a place to reconcile data from multiple sources. So we partnered with State Department of Education, with SARA, with multiple school districts, multiple higher education partners, to begin to build a data set that could begin to look at the teacher pipeline in much more robust and much more profound ways. So our partners at SREB set the stage really nicely by looking at regional data and some things that are specific to South Carolina. SC Teacher complements that and makes it, I would say in many ways, a much more robust and in a good way, self-centered look at South Carolina and its educator workforce needs. So again, it's reconciling data from multiple sources and is in the process of conducting some new work as well. So I'll talk about a few pieces of that. One of those is graduate and employer satisfaction surveys as well. There are a multitude of things that have been published through SC Teacher thus far. There's annual workforce reports that we've developed that really help us better understand the demographics of our workforce, characteristics of it, the preparation of individuals, their pathways through it, gender, race, ethnicity, placement in rural and urban schools, high poverty, low poverty schools, and so forth. And particularly what I'm focused on today is the design and delivery of the teacher working conditions survey, something that we heard from multiple partners is an important contextual element to understanding the experiences of educators in schools, and then also beginning to uncover some ways in which we can address both recruitment and retention of individuals entering the workforce. That working conditions survey, I think, is one important element of it, is it's not simply a survey to deploy and get data on and be done with it. It's only good to the extent to which it is accompanied by some actionable tools that can begin to unpack some of the data that we see in it. So not only will there be a dashboard report for districts that can be disaggregated at school level. I've given each of you a frequently asked questions sort of document that you might be interested in to give some granular details on that. I'll talk through it in just a little bit. But those will be able to be disaggregated at school level, along with an associated toolkit that will allow individuals to understand more deeply and some resources to go and attack certain elements that are inside that working conditions to begin to address those. And then if you think about kind of a regular cadence of distribution of that survey, 1 year on, take a year off and address the professional development needs associated with seeing how you can address gaps in those working conditions, re-administer the following year, and then understand the areas in which would have been improved through those professional development initiatives, areas that maybe need a little bit more nurturing, and then again, do that on again, off again year, so you have an opportunity and space to begin to address it, so you're not just saturating with a repeat of a working conditions instrument each and every year. So I think one of the things that's particularly important about SC Teacher is that it's building a large-scale database that allows us to track over an extended period of time. So many of our understandings about workforce needs are derived from sort of one snapshot picture that don't allow us to really understand the trajectory of individual educators. So one of the things that we're able to do in SC Teacher is to track at the individual teacher level. One of the things that we know from our exit surveys, which I'll comment on here in just a minute, is that roughly 43% last year and about the same the previous year of teachers who left their positions were engaging in what we might describe as lateral movement. So that means moving from one district to another district. So creates a vacancy. It is a departure, but it's a different kind of departure than someone who chooses to simply leave the profession altogether. And we also know that individuals who engage in lateral movement do so for different reasons than those who engage in sort of non-lateral movement or leaving the profession altogether. So that kind of database, that kind of understanding about our workforce, and those kinds of reports are going to provide us much more salient ideas about what's going on inside our schools and what's going on with our workforce in a more longitudinal way. So some of the reports that have been published thus far, we look at the relationship between teachers and leadership and how that impacts retention. We've looked at the uniformity of vacancies. So our partnership with Sarah allows us to look at the vacancy reports. As you might imagine, as we've heard in previous reports today, the vacancy rates are non-uniform. They're regional and they're subject specific. We've also looked at school-related factors related to teacher retention, and there's an updated report that will be out in the next few weeks there that let us understand, are there differences by school level, meaning elementary, middle, and secondary? Are there differences between principal experience levels? Are there differences by poverty? Are there differences in 1- and 3-year rates? Because those sometimes can tell a little bit different picture. And then we also have exit survey reports. So in the spring of 2021, we administered a small pilot with about 5 districts, maybe 300 or so exiting teachers completed that survey. We expanded that, doubled the number of districts, and got to a place to where it was probably a bit more representative this last school year with 10 districts across the state. About 600 exiting teachers. Interestingly, from a methodological standpoint, we got the same kinds of results through both of those, so we're getting closer to the idea that we kind of feel like we're representing the state pretty well with that exit survey. But that gives us another picture about, again, why teachers leave, what choices are they making about those departures, and are there material difference between different populations type. So novice, experienced teachers, and then again, those engaging in lateral and non-lateral movement. So some forthcoming reports. I mentioned that we're going to talk about some 1- and 3-year retention rates. I mentioned that there are differences by school level, differences by principal experience. So I'll give you a little teaser for that. That'll be out here in the next few weeks. At the high school level, principal experience level does not seem to impact so much teachers' retention, but it does at the elementary and middle school level. So principal experience, highly impactful elementary and middle level. At the middle level, as you might imagine, their retention rates are much lower at the middle level than they are at elementary or secondary, and much lower in high poverty middle schools. So if you're going to target teacher retention in the most acute areas, it is high poverty middle schools in South Carolina, and that report makes that salient. The other area that I've been asked about multiple times in different settings is about differences in retention among different race and ethnicity in South Carolina. I'm excited that later this spring, probably sometime next month, we'll have a report on contract renewals by race and ethnicity in South Carolina to understand that as well. So that's an important paper. So those are 2 forthcoming papers. One will be out here very soon, and then the next a bit after that. But again, SC Teacher's in the process of building this robust database from multiple sources that is going to allow us to look at a more longitudinal view at a teacher level to look at those experiences across the state. Some past workforce-related reports, we do look at the demographics of the workforce. We look at the number of international teachers and where they're positioned in the state. We look at the percentage of national board certification, which we already heard a little bit about. So you get a really deeper understanding about what that profile looks like. I mentioned everything from education level, experience, race and ethnicity, international teachers, alternative certification, poverty levels, all of those different variables lumped together to look at key characteristics. That is our most recently published paper, and it's available on the website as well. So on to what I was asked to talk about today, but I wanted to make sure that you understood that the work that SC Teacher is doing isn't just limited to the teacher working conditions. It is a part of a much larger portfolio that SC Teacher has been building over the last several years. That survey will launch, February 13th is Monday. So we're excited to have the launch of that next Monday. You'll see there that 38 districts so far have provided data to us to allow us to administer that survey to individual teachers. That represents about 2/3 of the eligible respondents. We anticipate having a second round later in the month for any additional districts. It's going to take about 10 to 15 minutes to complete that survey. We've done a pilot with a multitude of teachers, and that seems to be about our sweet spot there. And that survey will close towards the end of March. Again, everybody in the room should have a document that has some pretty good details on what that has in it. There are 7 constructs that are listed there. You'll see, I'll read them in case you can't see that. Administrative support, communication with the principal, available resources, parent support, cooperation, recognition among staff, influence over school policy and decision-making, and autonomy in the classroom. In addition to those 7 areas, on the handout, it does have a little bit more detail on there that asks some additional demands for teachers. Those are amount of paperwork and routine duties, student engagement, student behavior, and student safety and health are also measured in that working conditions instrument. So you might say, well, how did you arrive at those constructs? They're derived from a few different places. One of which the areas in which the research tell us that teacher working conditions impact teacher retention and job satisfaction. That's thing number 1. 2, there's a literature base that extends beyond educator workforce and just what are characteristics of a working environment which are supportive and positive. That influences it, as well as existing instruments. I think in an earlier presentation, North Carolina was noted as well. So all of those have fed into the design of South Carolina's instrument and will allow us to do some comparisons across states as well, because some of those constructs are very similar. Some questions about sort of the protection of those data. We're not going to share anything at the school level unless at least 50% of the eligible teachers in the school have responded to it. And in any instance where there's fewer than 10, we won't report at school level, just at district level. Any reporting will be done at aggregate level. And we hope to have the preliminary report out to the task force in late April. So we should have a pretty good general summary with just some general characteristics of what that survey says by the end of April. I think what the proviso said was maybe end of May. We hope to beat that by a good solid month. So again, I mentioned earlier about doing this 2-year cycle. So the idea with the survey isn't that it becomes a part of the accountability system in South Carolina, but it should become a part of the actionable data for systemic improvement. So the goal is to be able to administer that survey, provide reports at state, district, and school levels that will be able to make very clear the areas in which can be improved upon at each of those levels. And then again, have an off-year cycle where we can engage in professional development around that work. So imagine a dashboard that has the data on it, and then below that has some areas in which, hyperlinked areas in which you can go and receive toolkits and support for addressing many of those areas. We have a national nonprofit partner, the Center for Teaching Quality, that's been great to work with us on the design of that work as well. And then again, a re-administration in that 3rd year to kind of do a checkpoint and see where things are. I think that
Very good.
Might be the end. And I should say too, Dr. Christine DeStefano is here today.
Yes.
If you have any questions about measurement or measurement quality or any very fine-grained details about that, Dr. DeStefano is your person.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Quickly, any questions? Yes.
I just have one. I'm sorry, you may have covered this. Are you just going to be surveying current teachers? What about recently retired teachers or teachers that have recently left the profession?
Yeah, so we are talking about the experiences of active teachers in the classroom. We've got several position codes, so we're looking for teachers who, and I've got it in my notes here. I can actually read those position codes to you just really quickly. So we're looking at special education, itinerant, self-contained resource, pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, classroom, retired and returning to teach. So we're looking for those particular position codes on the first round. We recognize that there is a need to survey many more people who have an engagement inside schools to be able to do that. But I think as a first run and first experience for South Carolina, attacking those people who are I don't mean that in that way, surveying those people who are directly teaching students inside classrooms is going to be a really important thing for us to capture first, then begin to expand the scope of that out just a bit. Could include individuals who've recently retired too, but we really want to get at what's the experience like right now for people who are in the profession.
Right. Other questions? Yes.
So since there's nothing more tightly viewed and widely viewed than a live stream of a teacher task force meeting, for all the people that are watching right now that are thinking, I cannot wait to take this survey on Monday, where are they seeing it? And how can groups help inform people the importance of completing this, because your data is only as good as participation rates, and we want everybody to participate?
Well, I would hope someone that represents PSTA would play an important role in making sure that voice gets out. In all seriousness, so we've taken an organic approach. So the districts have supplied email addresses for those that fit those position codes, and then we're administering that survey through Qualtrics is the survey tool that's being administered. So it will show up in their district email addresses directly to them. And again, it won't be everybody. There is some cleaning of the data that we've received from some places. So we'll be ready to launch a subset of those folks on Monday. And then we'll follow up with some additional administration. So if someone doesn't see it Monday, that's not cause for alarm. I will say, we've got, as I said, we've got 2/3 of the state. So that's what, 30 some odd, 30, I think I've got the actual numbers here, 35,000 or so teachers are ready to load. But there's, of the eligible positions, by our count, we've got 54,573. So we're still down a little bit, being able to get those data in.
Okay, and that is for classroom teachers only, right? It's not for counselors or any other?
At this run, and again, I want to emphasize, yes, I mean, and I want to make very clear that counselors, speech language pathologists, there's lots of other individuals whose voice certainly we want to hear as a first run. I'll emphasize first run at this. We're trying to kind of narrow the scope and make sure that we can really capture those individuals who are in classrooms to be able to make sure that we get that voice heard this time around with a concerted look at expanding that work over time.
Right, because I know that our charge through Dr. Nielsen, when we finished the report, is that we wanted to broaden the report to counselors and, throughout the school because of the shortage in all of those areas.
So we do have the capability of creating a more generic link that's not tied to, us being able to kind of backtrack. So we have to ask a little bit more demographic data of
Sure.
people if we have to. So we will be able to capture more. So if there's a desire to go ahead and try and capture some of that, we have a mechanism for doing that. We just have to ask people to sort of self-report more data to be able to kind of talk about that in a meaningful way.
And Dr. Hodges, since you all are doing this, and I know that the state itself was looking at a data system to be able to tie all reports together, to be able to follow cohorts of students and know where they end up, where they're going, and that kind of thing. And they got a slow start, but I think they are progressing on that kind of thing. But you and I spoke very recently about North Carolina and a data system that they have that the state can look at, whether it be workforce, education, where are our cohorts of students, where are the weaknesses, where are the strengths, what is happening to these cohorts of students? Are they graduating high school? Will this be able to be put into that kind of database that would serve the whole state in those kind of things?
Absolutely. It's able to pull data in and push it right back out just as easily as we can pull it in. So yeah, we'll be able to report that back out as a part of a larger ecosystem around whether it be workforce or this longitudinal look at student achievement through compulsory attendance, post-secondary attendance, and out into the workforce. It'll be able to feed that quite well. Obviously, the view of SC Teacher is around educator workforce,
Right.
but there's no reason why it can't both pull and push data to help elevate that work.
Thank you. Any other questions of Dr. Hodges?
Or Dr. DeStefano, if you want to.
Yes, and Dr. Stefano, thank you
Methodological
for being
quality.
here with us today, for the work that you do.
To help put this out, is
Would you, yeah, come to, so that they can hear you online too.
If anybody is nervous about the individual email, it is for retention rate and for protection. So that may be something, it's in the materials, but just to know when you're putting out information, that it is as a broader protection. So I thought that may be something of interest. And other than that, you did a good job.
Very good. Thank y'all so much. Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Hodges. Look forward to seeing the results of all of that and helping this committee to move forward on their paper that is due in May. At this time, Lila is going to present to us our South Carolina Department of Education on efforts of retainment and support of our educators. And I want to thank you again for putting all of this together for us today. You have done a yeoman's work. And I know Kenzie's staffing a lot of the committees too, but we want to thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I'll keep my task force hat on just for a moment to also thank Kenzie Riddle, Beverly Hyatt Flight, who just needed to leave, and then, of course, the folks who really make it happen, Lynette Moses up at our security desk, Katrina Goggins, who helped us get the website set up, and then Raymond Dews and Quinn Murphy, who are with us today doing tech. So
Right.
thank you so much to them.
I think you have a new member of the SCDE
and Lisa,
staff.
What's your name, my dear? Lisa Widener is also part of our legislative staff, so thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'll go ahead and get started. I know I sit between you and actual discussion of all of these presentations. My timer had to go, so I'm going to put my timer on, and when it beeps, we'll be done. But I'm here now putting on my hat as a director here at the South Carolina Department of Education in the Office of Educator Effectiveness and Leadership Development to share what is in terms of policy, in terms of efforts the department has made, in terms of some of the data that we collect, and thank goodness partners like SREB and SC Teacher analyze, because we certainly don't have the capacity for that, and to just set the table for what you dream could be, because we're here to support whatever the recommendations of the committee are. There are just 4 points we want to hit with you today. The first is that data piece around retention and educator effectiveness, support for new teachers, support for new principals and leadership teams, and we'll wrap up with creating a culture that retains great educators, both teachers and great school leaders. The other thing I'll say is we have slotted in time for Teach.org, who is our partner on recruitment, to talk to the recruitment subcommittee. And then my colleague Mary Hipp will be up next time, and she leads the Office of Educator Services that deals with both educator preparation and educator credentialing certification. So those are not areas in which I will testify about today. Our office is really all about growing our educators to lead schools where all students have equitable access to effective instruction. And that language comes from Title II in ESEA, our federal legislation, that every student should have access to strong teaching and leadership. The way that we do that is we focus in on supporting mainly districts with that educator evaluation system for principals, teachers, as well as those other areas that Mrs. Allison just mentioned, our counselors, our librarians, our speech language pathologists, as well as supporting new teacher and principal induction, and then supporting professional development specifically targeted to instructional leadership. If we look first at the data, just a few highlights, and this really lines up with some of the presentation that we've seen from SREB. Over on the left-hand side, you're seeing a graph based on the data that's from South Carolina report cards, which is the percentage of teachers returning to the school who were previously employed in the previous year. And South Carolina is right around that 10% average for the past years since 2018. Where you see the big discrepancy is between our lowest school and our highest school. In our highest schools, they keep about the same teachers every single year. Maybe they have a couple roll off their staff. But in our lowest schools, you might only have 80% of your teachers coming back. In 1920, we had one school where 90% of teachers weren't coming back, only 10% were left. And the support that's needed when you're in a school where half or more of your teachers are turning over is very different than what you need when you have a stable workforce. The other data point we wanted to point your attention to that's from the state report card is percentage of vacancies greater than 9 weeks. So this is FTEs that districts need, they have the enrollment for, and they report they weren't able to hire a teacher there for greater than 9 weeks. That rose in 2021-22 to above 2% of our teacher workforce. And again, that's data taken from our state report card. So we do see that vacancies are increasing. The other pieces of data we wanted to share were around percentages of new teachers and principals. And I share this in part because we know entry into those areas is really, really important, and support is really important to keep both new teachers but also new school administrators and have them thrive where they are. The first data point is induction teachers, and this is, South Carolina does have the option for people to have 3 years of induction support. This is just teachers on an Induction 1 contract as reported by their district through the evaluation system. That percentage has been pretty stable from 2015 through 2021, which is the latest year that we have data. Districts have actually just been working this month to report their Induction 1 teacher count to us. As far as induction principals, we draw this from South Carolina's requires principal induction for every principal in the state that's run by the State Department. We do have one district, Greenville County, who has been doing principal induction on their own. I believe that started in 2019, but these numbers include those Greenville induction principals. The average is around 10% over time. We did see a spike in 2018-19, and we've seen another spike this year where over 11% of schools in South Carolina have a teacher in principal induction this year. So we want to share that because we know that supporting those educators who have made a career change into being the lead learner in a school or who are coming into teaching do need some support. The last data point that we'll share is really around the data that's collected through the educator evaluation system. Starting in 18-19, the state invested in data infrastructure that allows us to track at the indicator level, kind of the rubric level for our evaluation systems, what the trends are. On the teacher area, the strengths you can see on the left. On the teaching rubric, the areas of growth, thinking, assessment, and questioning have been fairly stable over time. Grouping has popped in since the pandemic. We've seen grouping come on. Questioning and grouping I've circled because they're also, these are the lowest average indicators. Questioning and grouping are the most commonly refined indicators on that list. So when observers go in, they can pick one area a teacher is to work on, and they quite often pick, they most frequently pick questioning and grouping. Lesson structure and pacing is also a very common refinement because our new teachers need some help getting it all to fit in one class period. For our principals, I'll just point out that the areas of growth, instructional leadership, effective management, and climate have been the 3 lowest scoring indicators. They're the hardest indicators on the rubric since 2015. And we've used that data in our office to really target some of our leadership development around those 3 areas. The last piece of data that we'll share with you is just a new human capital data dashboard that we have made available to districts. It currently has 1 year of data, 2020, 2021. By the end of February, we intend to add back to 2018 and inclusive through 2022. It does pull together multiple data sources. So you can look at your student demographics at a district or school level compared to others in the state, including, and teacher demographics, including things like race and gender for students, multilingual learners, students in poverty. For teacher demographics, things like student-teacher ratio. that we've talked about some this morning. The workforce outlook component is the part I've worked with the Office of Educator Services on, and that pulls together some of those data points that are in disparate places, principal experience, educator effectiveness, teacher induction, and then some of that workforce data around returning and vacancies. A couple probes from the climate survey that are not on the report card, like I feel supported by my school administration. This is still a work in progress. We have made it available to districts for their feedback. I talked to the HR administrators about that yesterday, and there'll be a memo coming forth soon about that. We intend to make it available to the task force in a private way so that you'll have this data as you're making recommendations as well. I couldn't have a leadership development presentation without one leadership quote, and so I've been going back at the beginning of this year to one of my favorite leaders, Marcus Aurelius. He's a good one for this time. He led through a pandemic. He certainly dealt with lots of war and strife, and he says, injustice lies in what you aren't doing, not only in what, it often lies in what you aren't doing, not only in what you are doing. I think lots of times we see data presentations and we see these big statewide trends, but we don't dig down into the details and the locality. There is a teacher shortage, but it is localized, as every speaker has said today. And so with this dashboard, we hope to give schools, districts, but I'm very passionate about school leaders, the ability to dig down and see those differences. So for example, this is one of our smaller districts, and this is the percentage of induction teachers. Overall, as a district, 25% of their teachers that year were in induction, were new teachers to the field. But the support needed for elementary school number 1, with 50% of its staff being brand new teachers, maybe not, that doesn't even count who's new to the school. There might even be more folks there, versus elementary school 3 is very, very different. And so sometimes what we aren't doing is supporting the very local needs and digging into that data. Our office would like to make that more possible. A few of the areas we are trying to support, the first is support for new teachers. The law around this is cited here in statute that was written in the year 2000, as well as 43-2051. The year 2000, you'll see a lot of places because we were doing a lot of thinking about education and reform in that year. And this isn't an educational policy history place, but we know that there was a lot of attention around this. It established that we would pay attention to induction and mentoring in South Carolina, and we've updated that legislation to say induction should be there for teachers for up to 3 years at district discretion. Every new teacher in South Carolina is required to have a mentor, which is a fairly unique requirement, and they have to be trained with a standardized training. When I became a new teacher mentor, I was given a form and told, here's what you fill out, and here's when we need it. Take care of them, but make sure you get these forms in. I was not taught how to coach, how to observe. It also happened to me when I got student teachers, and I asked for that support. In South Carolina, I'm really glad that support is built in. Our office, in conjunction with SARA, the Center for Educator Recruitment, Retention, and Advancement, leads that training, and Dr. Kimberly Howard is the contact in our office. There is a yearly plan that districts conduct around evaluation and mentoring, and they are required to take data, including survey data, around the effectiveness of their induction programs. In 2017, we updated the guidelines to align with the profile of the South Carolina graduate, the new teaching rubric, but also to put a little bit more accountability and clarity around a district's role in running a strong induction and mentoring program. Out of induction and mentoring, we do take the data point of that number of Induction 1 teachers. It's used to distribute $873,909 to districts. That ends up being about $200 or $300 to run per teacher, per induction teacher, to run your whole induction program for not just your induction teachers, but everyone else. The funding has been at the same level since 2012. The other leg of our stool is supporting new principals and leadership teams. Similarly, in the year 2000, South Carolina noted, way ahead of lots of the research from the Wallace Foundation, that principals are an incredibly important factor in the sustainability of teachers and in the performance of students. And so legislation was written that authorized both standardized principal evaluation, but also very clearly outlined what principal induction and mentoring needed to look like. Like our partnership with Sarah and districts on teacher induction, it's a partnership between the South Carolina Department of Education, who provides a year-long induction cohort, and a leadership coach who comes out to visit your school and helps that leader in reflections on their personal development. But districts are responsible for orienting new principals, hiring them, local induction, and providing a local mentor. This partnership is really, really important because although good leadership is leadership anywhere you go, your policies, your procedures, your safety protocol is very, very localized. And so districts have to take the lead on what it means to be a great principal in Clover versus just a great instructional leader and principal. Our leadership development cohorts, and including principal induction, focus hard on instructional leadership, effective management, and school culture, because that's what we see in our principal evaluations needs to be worked on. So those are the areas of focus. We do also provide leadership development for other roles who are listed up here, and it is focused around those areas as well as what does it look like to have access to effective teaching? What does it look like to have teachers' voice involved in leadership, that collective leadership? And then how do you personalize professional development for the educators in your building and personalized learning for students is a big focus. We try to do this and be very clear about the articulation with SCASA, our Association for School Leaders, because they provide the bulk of leadership development in South Carolina. We're an on-ramp to the offerings that they have, and Dr. O'Gorman, who's our SCASA representative, can probably speak more about that if the committee is interested. Finally, in the spirit of Marcus Aurelius and looking at what we haven't been doing, something our office had not been providing professional learning around was thinking about how do you create a culture that specifically retains excellent teachers and excellent educators. Our data has been screaming at us that we really need to do that. And so our theory of action has been, how can our office create these resources, create supports that really help schools create this culture? We've had 4 areas we've been trying to do work in. One is equipping principals with the skills to recruit and retain great teachers in their role as human capital managers. We mentioned support for early career teachers and principals. Using data to target support and differentiate support for high-need schools and districts, and then using data to decrease disparities and making that data available to our districts. Just 2 initiatives that we have that I'll mention briefly. One is we have partnered with the U.S. Human Capital Academy to start human capital district and school networks. And we specifically invited and nominated folks who showed up on that critical needs list, who had higher percentages of teacher vacancies, who maybe had lower scores on the report card. Usually we just let whoever wants to come to a cohort come, but we tried to be very targeted. This is just an example. This slide talks about research from way back to 2016 about what a difference principals make in retaining teachers. And so this is just an example of some of what we do. And we're very, very thankful for that partnership and learning more all the time about how best to support principals to really understand that role and skill themselves in that role. The other initiative that we've focused around culture is directly related to trying to increase teacher efficacy. Hattie defines that as the belief of a staff in a school that they can affect student outcomes. It is highly correlated to student achievement, one of the highest effect sizes that Hattie has studied, and our collective leadership initiative has been a part of that. That is school leaders having a team that includes teachers coming together to solve problems in a district. The conditions across the top have been researched by our national partner, the Center for Teaching Quality, and Dr. John Eckert at Baylor, as being the conditions that are in place in a school where teacher voice is a part of that problem solving. Luckily, we've been doing this work since 2016, so we have some data that all of those 7 conditions at the top are correlated to teacher efficacy at a strong or moderate level, and that the ones that are most highly correlated are supportive norms and working relationships and shared influence. So if we can continue working, and this is data from 16 schools who have been with us for over 3 years, that we were able to work with our partners at CTQ to analyze, we see that correlation is pretty tight. And so that tells me, whether it's with our collective leadership initiative schools or with other schools working on supportive norms and working relationships and shared influence as a school leader with your teachers, making sure they have a voice can be highly correlated to their efficacy. So that's some of the work the department is doing. I will step down now, but I'll say you have easy access to me. I've certainly sent you enough emails. Welcome any questions during the questions period or directly at another time.
Thank you, Lila. And we do appreciate the work that you've done for us and the presentation today. Let me ask you this. When we talk about training, especially with, principals and any type of training, are those training sessions mandatory for people?
They're two different lanes. So things like the principal induction program are mandated. It's in statute, it's in regulation, so they have to come, it's actually part of their licensure. In order to advance to Tier 2, they have to do it. If you want to evaluate teachers or counselors or librarians in the state, you have to go through a mandatory training and take a test. And so it's kind of like Pokemon. I have a 7-year-old son, you catch them all. For the other trainings, they are optional. They are opt-in, and so superintendents usually nominate teacher leaders or new district level leaders to come into those leadership development programs. And they don't have the large capacity that principal induction does.
Okay, thank you. Questions, input? We're into discussion portion, so we certainly open that up to all of you for not only questions, but any discussion concerning any. I know that Megan is still here with the SREB, and of course, Dr. West is still here and others. If you have any questions or discussion or input for the betterment of the cause, please feel free at this time. Anybody online that has any input? I'm not sure they're out there. I have not heard one word from any of them. No, I know that the senator was, Senator Greg Henry was online, and I know that Tim was not feeling well, along with Dr. Nielsen, and then Tim McGinnis was not here today because his wife was having a procedure and all. But we hope that you have been able to see and listen today. You all are a quiet group. No questions, no input. Patrick, I can't believe.
I have a question.
Oh, please do.
Yes, this would be to you. I was noticing on the PowerPoint, the career ladders. I found that to be very interesting. In the advancement options, you had professional teacher, master teacher, and mentor teacher. Could you speak just a moment to distinguish between those three?
Certainly. As an important note, states do use different language, but those are common terms used, but sometimes lead teacher or other words are used. But there are several states in our region, of course, around the country, who do have career ladders built into their licensure structure and their licensure policies. ECS pointed out Oklahoma is one in our region. Also, Arkansas would point out is another strong state with these that are legislated and regulated in policy. Others have dabbled, but those two are probably of the stronger in our state. There are other states to point out, too, that offer really great training for these lead and master teachers and mentor teachers. But pretty much across the board, it's a standardized way of providing 2 levels up for teachers to go past professional status. Typically, the first level up would be those who are content experts or experts in other aspects of school leadership and instructional leadership that are important. So it could be someone who's an expert in special education, someone who's an expert in social emotional learning, someone who's an expert in English or math, department chairs, these types of things. Also those who can take on increased capacity of teaching more students because they excel in their craft, they excel in their content, and they have those skills to be able to do so. Typically, then, the mentor teacher, and again, some different words are used in different states, but that as the top tier are those who not only excel in instructional leadership with their own students, but they have the training and/or the characteristics to be able to excel in mentorship of their colleagues. So they can then help with the collective leadership in a school building. The principal being the instructional leader, they can assist in making sure that new teachers, struggling teachers, all have those skills to be able to grow in their instructional and content capabilities.
Anyone else?
While you're up, so pathways like that are fascinating to me. One question I keep coming to when I look at something like what DC Public Schools has done or what Oklahoma's done is it's innovative. I think it's more appealing to a modern workforce, but we also have teacher job duties and salary schedules that have been calcified over Lord knows how many years. Have any states set a good example for how you make the transition from what was to what should be? Because it doesn't feel as simple as just flipping a switch when you're talking about people's salary schedules and job duties. So what does that transition look like? Is there a good model out there to look at?
Excellent question. No state in the country has in their own salary policies actually put in a mandated salary increase for lead teachers such as master teachers, mentor teachers, or any other name to it. DC public schools have, but again, they're not a state. A little bit different structure there. There is, though, many districts around the country who have done this. And there's a fantastic model which kind of leads in this regard. It's called Opportunity Culture. It's built from a group called Public Impact, located in North Carolina, but they work with states and districts all across the country. And they do have a very fantastic model that can be applied and has been applied in many districts across the country, from low-income districts to high-income, different kinds of demographics, all sorts of budgetary and policy standpoints and barriers. So I would very much point the task force to looking at that model. There are a few other models as well, but they're very similar. Opportunity Culture does provide a lot of great data, though, to back up that work. So it is something that we would love to see a state take this on. And we have much about this in our resources and our blueprint about how to take that on in building up compensation as well as other supports for these career ladder positions.
Thank you.
That's
I was
great.
gonna say the same thing.
Yes.
I'm very interested in that. Patrick and I have been talking about it in multiple meetings, and I know we're on a task force about compensation. I really think it would be an interesting opportunity to take some non-recurring money and allow some districts a chance to pilot and try to figure this out. Because I know, talking to my daughter, who's a first-year teacher, you know, you're 100% right when you say, Tracy, that they are already thinking, I'm not going to stay in this same exact role for 30 years. I'm just not going to do it. I want to grow. I want to have advancement. I want to be a leader. And if that's through administration, that's the way I'm going to go. But when I pitched an idea about how we could build teacher leadership roles to her, she said, not only does that make sense and give me some hope, she said, but also I'm already going to that best science teacher in the building. I'm already going to that best teacher of writing. They're not getting paid any extra, but they're taking me on because I have so many questions. Why don't you figure out a way to incentivize their leadership?
Sure.
And help me at the same time as a young first-year teacher. So I'm really very much interested in piloting some ideas around this.
Yes, and there are many examples of great pilots. And I will point out, too, that Opportunity Culture model is able to help districts adjust the pay scale as well as other supports using all money that they have right now. They do not require any extra money coming in or any grants or anything like that. They have a structure and guidance. They're able to walk the district through how to do it with the exact dollars that they have currently.
Can you share that information?
Yes, I'd be
with-
happy to.
With us?
And I can
we'll
connect the task force with Public Impact as well. They'd be more than happy, I'm sure, to share in more detail.
Great. I think Dr. Hodges has a question.
Not so much a question, maybe just a statement for our group. I mean, so incentivizing mentorship is important, but also there's workplace design issues too. And so how teachers how buildings are equipped and how leadership and teachers in a classroom are structured such that maybe we move past some of the one teacher, one classroom models in ways in which teachers have opportunities and other education professionals in a building have opportunities to work in the service of children in a more collective environment, that then those resources that are directed, whether it be through pilot, are then incentivizing structures that change cultures and not just are simply dollars that substantiate an existing system. I think there are some places out there that have at least attempted that and have had some successes. Some parallel conversations around what's going on in Mesa, Arizona, and some of the work that's going on at Arizona State might be something that could be an attractive thing to look at, so that you're not only creating and identifying the resources to do it, but also the structural and cultural mechanisms that get out of what's probably an antiquated design.
So true. Patrick, you have another.
Statement / potential question to anyone, but so much good data today. One thing that struck me with the SREB presentation was you had the slide on things that are increasing for teachers. 44% of teachers reporting more working hours, 56% of teachers planning to leave, which was up from, I think, 28% if I was reading the slide right in 2020. I've seen that data for years. In 2021, you kind of look at it as, well, of course you're thinking about leaving. We're in the middle of a pandemic. This is insane. Now we're in 2023. You had a spike from 2022 to 23 in terms of the percentage of teachers thinking about leaving, and multiple presenters today talked about respect being a factor that drives teachers out of the classroom. That's a challenge for us as a task force because there's no easy policy solution to respect. You can use policy to increase pay. You can use policy to decrease class size or to provide additional supports in a classroom through a multi-professional model in the classroom. Respect kind of scares me, to be honest, because without getting political, I mean, it's been a week where respect has been kind of challenging for teachers in South Carolina. And when I look at what has changed since 2020 that would cause that massive spike in teachers planning to leave, the pandemic has ebbed. I won't say it's gone because there are still people sick with it, but it's certainly not what it was in 2021. So what has changed since 2020 that causes that spike? Teachers have always been overworked. Teachers have always had pay issues. What has changed is a lot of the tenor. And so as a task force, I think we've got to find a way to lead on that issue as well. It may not be a recommendation that the General Assembly can put into a policy, but I think we would be remiss if we don't have a recommendation that addresses the issue of the narrative around the teaching profession locally and statewide.
And I certainly agree with what you said. Number one, I think it's very, very important for the ability in leadership. I think that teachers who, and there was a slide that was up a few minutes ago of low and high teachers staying. I think teachers stay where there is good leadership, there's good respect, there's an opportunity to feel not just needed by students, but that their opinions are respected and are listened to and those kind of things. So I think leadership at the school level, district level, all is a very important thing. And the other thing is that as we who have been tasked with this report to get out in May, that we need to look at how we're going to present this report to let leadership in the General Assembly understand, because, you know, they all come with a certain, I don't want to say agenda, but they come with a certain mindset of where the state's going and that kind of thing. And often they don't have the ability or the time to really delve into where it is. But leadership in any kind of capacity, and I think when it comes to schools, I've seen that. And you could see it from the teachers that were hanging on. I guarantee you, there was great leadership there. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I would like to ask Dr. Hodges, I really like the TWC that you've got. You had highlighted, I believe it was 4 different areas that it was going to really look at. And one was student health and safety. Are there going to be any data produced on teachers' perception of teacher health and safety within those schools?
I want to ask Dr. DeStefano to speak on that. I think she's,
Okay.
answer's yes, but.
Thank you.
That's a great question. Yes, we are planning on putting that in the next version for sure, but we do have a concern of teachers' well-being as well as student, well-being.
Okay,
So,
wonderful. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. I think that goes to what you were speaking to as well regarding teacher respect and, the esteem of the profession itself. Thank you very much.
Yes.
So I think that the issue of respect is obviously really important for keeping teachers, but I can say as a student in a teacher preparation program, I know a lot of students who came out of high school and were interested in going into the profession, and like the slide from ECS, 54% of those parents said, absolutely not, I'm not gonna, support you in this. And it's caused a lot of really strong people who feel a calling to teaching, choosing not to go into the profession. So it's not just about keeping the teachers, it's about showing that this is a place where you want to be and where you can thrive. And a lot of that has to do with that career ladder that we're talking about. But I just wanted to note that that is something that is very prevalent on college campuses right now, and also is a big reason why we have students leaving teacher prep programs and changing majors, because they get into the classroom and they get told, you're too smart for this, this is not for you, you can thrive somewhere else. So I just wanted to make that point, that it's not just about the retention aspect, but especially about the recruitment aspect as well.
Absolutely, and very well spoken and received. That such great input. Any other input? Any other? Yes, sir.
So I'm a verbal processor, so this may come out very jumbled up and whatnot. But and I think that this is more so directed to you, Dr. West, in terms of like, you spoke a little bit about like the teacher resiliency piece, right? And how that is something that's difficult to measure, but I know that it could look very different in terms of like district to district, school to school, right? And so I think my question more so, or comment, or whatever this is that's about to come out, is more so aligned to the exposure that students in educated preparation programs receive to underserved districts and our rural school districts and whatnot. Because I know that we have like a challenge there in terms of recruiting and retaining teachers in those particular areas. And I'm thinking about my own experience as a teacher and how I sometimes don't see like student teachers in our particular schools. So I'm wondering what is done in terms of like partnerships with struggling schools and school districts, and what is the conversation in terms of like trying to increase exposure so that our teachers feel prepared to go into struggling schools and have that resiliency piece to stay.
And that definitely is an issue. I mean, it's geography. So where our traditional educator preparation programs are housed typically defines the partnerships that you have. Easy access for those students and for those college faculty. Obviously, there are some programs that work outside of those barriers of geography. But the interesting piece, Mr. Jameson, and that you mentioned there that I think is so important is that exposure. And we have a responsibility outlined in our plans with the State Department to provide what is called a diverse range of experiences. Sometimes that's defined as grade levels, if that's the only diversity you have given the geographical region in which you're housed. But we look across the the demographics and the offerings of the local schools. But again, understanding the impact or the opportunity that we have to enter those classrooms is really not based on us, it's our partners. Partner districts identify classrooms for us to send students, like the one that we have here today, to complete their field work. And if there's an administrator in the room that says, oh, I'm going to pick the classroom that has the most challenges with the teacher that is struggling to give this pre-service educator the view, that's not typically what happens. We cycle through similarly, skilled teachers to show students this is what it should be. So they go into the classroom with an unrealistic feeling of, I got this, because they walked into a classroom where that environment was already established. So that's why long-term residencies and looking at some other options I think are important. But there are some examples with, like I mentioned, the CREATE program through the Office of Special Education Services. It is a grow your own initiative for special education certifiers. And Columbia College and about 7 other institutions currently partner with districts all around the state. For CREATE participants, we provide a fully online program, and then we send college supervisors to work with them in the districts in which they are employed. So that might be a way that you see more field work, but again, it doesn't look like the normal, traditional path because that many times is defined by geography. And I don't know if my other colleagues want to comment about their field experiences.
Yeah, I can comment. And so, Dr. West, you had talked about the APEC, the Alternative Preparation Program, and the ability to have the apprenticeship dollars associated with that too. So at the University of South Carolina, we've got the Carolina Collaborative for Alternative Preparation. And I think there are other models that have a grow your own approach to it that specifically target rural regions across the state. With that Carolina CAP program, there's a residency format too. And so that provides a 1-year living wage stipend embedded in those schools. So there's an understanding before you become teacher of record to be able to understand local context, local culture. So I think, and again, I'm giving you an example from our institution, but I would say across the state, there are institutions that are either already doing or are deeply interested in supporting rural areas across the state, particularly underserved areas, and providing a good, strong workforce. And what we know about being able to do that is attracting talent from those areas is key in providing a stable workforce. You don't want to simply bring somebody in from another area. There's not a lot of longevity to doing that. And so again, going after the grow your own models, going after areas that allow for the residency format, so you get a deep understanding of the teaching profession in that local context, are really key. And I think that there's a number of institutions that, again, are either doing that or certainly have that on their horizon.
Any other comments? Discussion? I want to call your attention to the agenda, and at the very bottom, there are 2 of our committees, the Teacher Climate and Representative Tim McGinnis's group. 2 of us have gone together because we sort of overlap. But there will be 3 meetings held that will be listening meetings. And that will not only be, that will be for teachers, school nurses, counselors, anyone that would like to come for input and whatever. And they're going to be held in 3 locations in the state. The first one is February the 27th. It will be held in Greenville, and you will be sent exactly where that's going to be held. The second one is March the 13th, and it's going to be at Francis Marion. The third one is March the 20th, and it'll be here in Columbia, and I believe it's going to be here. Is that correct? Oh, at the Block Building, yes, at the House of Representatives in the Block Building. But you'll get a notice as to where the Greenville meeting will be held. But
Dr. Stiles can tell us because she secured the location.
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Stiles, thank you.
Yes, it's going to be at MT Anderson Support Center, which is a very nice facility. It has
Yes.
lots of space. So we're looking forward to it and hoping to have a great turnout.
Wonderful. That is great. So you have all three of your places now and those dates. And we certainly hope that all of you can attend. And I am assuming if for some reason they can't attend in person, there will be a Zoom or a Teams set up for them. Any questions about that? Yes.
We will take good notes on the participation. I think sometimes people, particularly educators, but members of the public, can be intimidated by a live
Yes.
stream, so the plan is just to document the feedback.
Okay,
that comes
very
in.
good. Thank you. And thank you again for all the work that you and Kinsey are doing on this. Any other discussion or questions? Well, thank all of you for being here today, our people in our audience, our presenters and everything. Thank you so much. And if there's not anything else to come before the committee, we stand adjourned.